The city's transport strategy blueprint with 25 recommendations has been unveiled. The government has gazetted the removal of a law requiring bus passengers to wear seatbelts. And Jimmy Lai will be sentenced next Monday. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The government has unveiled its transport strategy blueprint, setting out 25 recommendations for Hong Kong's transport infrastructure for the next 20 years. The government will study the commercialization of autonomous vehicles and explore ways to expand cross-harbour transport capacity. The transport strategy blueprint is built around three core themes: enjoyable journeys, well-connected city, and healthy mobility, with 25 short, medium, and long-term recommendations for development. On transport infrastructure, the government plans to fully commission Route 6 this year, linking Central Kowloon Bypass Kowloon Bay section with the Tseung Kwan O Lambton Tunnel. After opening, authorities will review the level of tolls based on the traffic conditions and usage of different tunnels and major roads. The government has noted that traffic volumes at the existing cross-harbour tunnels have exceeded their design capacity and will study ways to ease congestion, including widening connecting roads. On whether a fourth cross-harbour tunnel may be built, authorities said all possibilities remain on the table. And they will consider technical feasibility as well as population growth and economic development. Also being spotlighted is the development of autonomous vehicles. Authorities will roll out commercial autonomous vehicle services in areas including the airport and Kai Tak. From next year, a project linking Airport Express Kowloon Station with West Kowloon High-Speed Rail Station will be implemented, with longer-term plans to apply autonomous driving tech at cross-boundary services, including the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. For ride-hailing services, the first batch of platforms is expected to begin operations as early as the fourth quarter.
We will put all these detailed requirements into the relevant batches of the subsidiary legislation as well as licensing conditions.
Meanwhile, 15 junctions will be converted into diagonal pedestrian crossings to improve walkability. The southbound travel for Guangdong vehicle scheme will be gradually extended to other Guangdong cities in the middle of this year. Authorities will review and discuss a phased increase in quotas.
So far, I think the demand and the booking figures are picking up and are steady, and we will monitor it closely in order to enable ourselves to accumulate more experience in order to scale up this scheme.
More studies are on the way to review the Hong Kong-Shenzhen West Rail Link, connecting Hengshui and Qianhai and Shenzhen, with possible extensions further south to urban areas in Hong Kong. The government has gazetted the removal of a provision requiring bus passengers to wear seatbelts. Secretary for Transport and Logistics Mabel Chan acknowledged responsibility for the issue. The mandate was suspended just 6 days after it took effect and is formally removed after the gazettal of its removal. Chan reiterates that seatbelts help enhance passenger safety, and the government will invite experts to study improvements to bus seatbelt designs. Other issues to be examined include whether different arrangements should apply to upper and lower decks, and whether the proposed $5,000 fine was excessive. The transport chief admits authorities should have re-examined the provision's details more carefully and should have conducted broader public consultation.
We must be more careful and also be very serious in examining and in taking forward important legislative exercise such as this seatbelt legislation with public consultation and with the views collected. This will enable us to explore actively or examine different feasible options, including possible areas to further enhance the arrangement for installation and wearing of buses by passengers on buses.
Authorities are set to amend the medical registration ordinance in a bid to boost the medical council's efficiency. Initial suggestions include increasing the proportion of non-medical members in the council and improving the mechanism on handling complaints. Timothy Lee reports.
The Health Bureau announced its intention to amend the medical registration ordinance just 1 day after the Office of the Ombudsman offered suggestions to deal with complaints about the medical council's inefficiency. They include raising the proportion of non-medical members in the current 32-member medical council from its current 1/3 ratio. In a bid to boost the efficiency on dealing with complaints, authorities also propose to strengthen the medical council's mechanisms, such as setting up targets to handle the complaints in various phases and the inclusion of more independent adjudicators. The proposal also aims to increase the Director of Health's role in the medical council, allowing more government oversight in the council's work. Under the proposed measures, medical practitioners found to have committed serious offenses could have their names removed from the list of registered doctors. This is Alex Lam, chairman of Hong Kong Patients' Voices, noted the lack of opportunity for lay members in the medical council to offer suggestions during council meetings. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Over the past 4 years, the hospital authority has strengthened stroke treatment services, shortening patient treatment time and reducing the mortality rate by 8.2%. The hospital authority says since 2020, the HA has improved stroke diagnosis and treatment processes and established a pre-hospital stroke reporting mechanism. Last March, a 24-hour ischemic stroke treatment service network covering, which enabled suitable patients to be arranged to designate a hospital for thrombectomy. Service improvements over the past 4 years have shortened the overall acute stroke treatment time by 10 to 17 minutes and reduced the mortality rate by 8.2%. In addition, the stroke centers at Queen Mary Hospital and Tuen Mun Hospital passed the accreditation of the National Stroke Center at the end of last year. Jimmy Lai, founder of Nix Digital, and 8 others will be sentenced next Monday in a case involving violations of the Hong Kong national security law. The judiciary website shows that sentencing is scheduled for 10 a.m. on February 9th at the West Kowloon Magistrates Courts and is expected to take an hour. Jimmy Lai is charged with 3 counts, including conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and conspiracy to publish seditious publications. Except for Lai, the other 8 defendants pleaded guilty. The trial began in December 2023. Last December, 3 judges found Lai guilty on all 3 charges. Last month, they heard mitigation pleas from the defendants. Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino said he hopes the legal battle with Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison over ports on the Panama Canal would not escalate, and argued the verdict was within the country's constitutional and legal framework. A media report says China has instructed state-owned enterprises to halt negotiations on new investment programs with Panama involving billions of US dollars. Danny Zhou brings more details.
In a press briefing, Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino said his government would remain firm in the ruling against a CK Hutchison subsidiary, emphasizing the independence of the courts. He said the decision is unique, definitive, final, and must be complied with. Saying Panama is a dignified country, Mulino rejected threats by any nation on earth. A week ago, Panama's Supreme Court announced that a concession held by a subsidiary of CK Hutchison to operate 2 ports on either end of the Panama Canal was unconstitutional. The subsidiary, Panama Ports Company SA, said in a statement that it had commenced arbitration against Panama over the case. Authorities in Beijing are reportedly applying additional scrutiny to Panamanian imports such as bananas and coffee. Sources say Chinese shipping firms have been instructed to opt to other ports for shipments under the circumstances that no considerable extra cost is incurred. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump gave his total endorsement of Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi ahead of a national election there on Sunday. Trump added he will meet her at the White House on March 19th. Trump said Prime Minister Takaichi is someone who deserves powerful recognition for the job she and her coalition are doing. He said, as President of the United States of America, it is my honor to give a complete and total endorsement of her and what her highly respected coalition is representing. However, Trump, who is seeking to maintain a fragile trade truce with China, has reportedly asked Takaichi not to further aggravate Beijing. Japan's first female premier, whose coalition is widely expected to win, is seeking a public mandate for spending plans that have rattled investors and a defense buildup that could further strain relations with China. Welcome back. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has apologized to victims of Jeffrey Epstein for appointing Peter Mandelson as the UK's ambassador to Washington, despite his ties to the disgraced financier. Daniel Rao tells us more.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the UK's former ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, had portrayed Jeffrey Epstein as someone he barely knew. Speaking in the English county of East Sussex, Starmer made a public apology for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
The victims of Epstein have lived with trauma that most of us can barely comprehend. And they've had to relive it again and again. They have seen accountability delayed and too often denied. To them, I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. He portrayed Epstein as someone he barely knew. And when that became clear, and it was not true, I sacked him. Such deceit is incompatible with public service.
Starmer fired Mandelson in September after emails were published showing he maintained a friendship with Epstein following the late financier's 2008 conviction for sex offences involving a minor. Epstein died by suicide in a jail cell in 2019 while awaiting trial on US federal charges accusing him of sexually abusing dozens of girls. Starmer never met Epstein and has not been accused of any wrongdoing. However, the Prime Minister is under intense pressure over the appointment after newly released documents revealed new details of Mandelson's close relationship with Epstein. British police are investigating Mandelson over potential misconduct in public office. He is not accused of any sexual offences. Documents published last week by the US Department of Justice contain new revelations. These include papers suggesting Mandelson shared sensitive government information with Epstein after the 2008 global financial crisis. There are also scores of chatty, jokey messages pointing to a much closer relationship than Mandelson had previously disclosed. 72-year-old Mandelson has been a major and contentious figure in the UK's Labour Party since the 1990s. He twice had to resign from senior posts in previous administrations because of scandals over money or ethics. TVB News.
Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel said his government would roll out a plan in the next week to deal with fuel shortages. This as the U.S. moves to block the supply of oil to the Caribbean island nation. Diaz-Canel reiterated prior statements from Cuba's foreign ministry, agreeing to talk with the United States to alleviate the tensions, but with conditions. However, the White House insisted the U.S. must call the shots.
I think the fact that the Cuban government is on its last leg and its country is about to collapse, they should be wise in their statements directed towards the President of the United States. But as I just reiterated, the President is always willing to engage in diplomacy, and I believe that's something that is taking place, in fact, with the Cuban government.
Back locally, a survey aimed at improving the health and well-being of caregivers in non-subsidized residential care homes found that more than 80% of workers are suffering from physical strain. This as a charity organization is urging authorities to intervene and support such work financially and introduce measures to improve the health of the workers. Timothy Lee has more.
With an aging population, frontline caregivers in non-subsidized residential care homes in the city have been tackling an unending list of challenges with a growing number of elderly citizens. Ms. Chan, a frontline worker in the industry, said she has faced enormous financial and physical pressure throughout much of her work with the elderly over the past decade, adding that the shortage of newcomers in the sector is only increasing the strain. According to a survey on improving caregivers' well-being funded by the Community Chest, workers in private residential care homes experience 6 areas of pain on their bodies on average. Some of the most common cases include pain in the right shoulder, waist, and left shoulder. More than 90% of those surveyed said their physical strain was a direct result of their work, with primary reasons for the pain being repeated movements, posture issues, and overwork.
Frontline workers in private care home are facing a lot of challenges, including the mental health problems and their physical stress. Because the labor is demanding, they are often working 12-hour shifts and without proper equipment to help them. Nowadays, the the image of the private care home is not good because many people think it's the dirty work and very heavy workload.
Noting the lack of physical exercise among healthcare workers at non-subsidized residential care homes, Caritas urged their workplaces to allocate time for their staff to engage in stretches and other physical activities in hopes of benefiting their overall health. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Dozens of people protested Israel's participation in the Winter Olympics in Milan as the Olympic torch arrived in the Italian city. The Games were set to begin on Friday with an inauguration ceremony at San Siro Stadium. Protesters called for Israel to be excluded from the Games, saying that countries' athletes should be treated as Russian athletes who are not allowed to participate in the Games under their country's flag. Other demonstrators held a Red Car for Israel placard and chanted pro-Palestinian slogans. The torch relay passed in front of the demonstrations and reached the main Plaza del Duomo as scheduled. The Olympic flame is being lit at the cauldron on Friday, where it will stay until the end of the Games. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.